And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting and work session for June 16th, 2020. By way of introduction, I'm John Hutchings, the chair of the board, and also present as vice chair, Commissioner Ty Menser and County Manager Romero Chavez. And I see Dr. Diana Yu and Treasurer Jeff Gadman. I feel like romper room. Director of EMS, Kurt Harden. And Tim's in the house. Tim, we're talking about stuff that's important to you?
Yes, we are.
Well, it must be. Let me go back to Romero Chavez, County Manager. Have I missed anybody that I cannot see?
Yes, Commissioner, you have Shelley Slaughter, the Director of Public Health Social Services.
There she is.
Dennis Osorio, the Director of IT. We have Elizabeth Petrich, our prosecuting attorney. You have Mark Muffett from Public Health Social Services. You have Mark Roy, the manager of the solid work. Just joined us, Keely Murno. Joined us Jennifer Davis. And
wow.
Yeah, I think that's it for now. And I believe Dr. Yu was with us. It's right there. Yeah.
Did I mention you already, Dr. Yu? Because I've been staring at you the whole time. I thought I did. Okay, good. Well, welcome everybody. If you'd like to join in via conference call, the phone number is 360-252-9020, and your PIN is 1234. And so we're going to begin this morning with a COVID-19 update. And my first question is, I know you're going to address it, but I'm going to ask you right up front, are we at risk of not getting into P3 because of the recent activity? So I'll leave it right there. You don't have to answer that. I know you'll answer it in your presentation, so go right ahead. Shelley Slaughter, Director of PHS.
Good morning, Commissioners. I will start by answering your question that we will be ready to submit for Phase 3 application. And Dr. Diana Yu will provide further details on that shortly after I give you the latest data report. So,
and by the way, that's tomorrow we're going to apply?
Tomorrow, the Board of Health will convene, followed by the Board of County Commissioners.
Beautiful. So that's the 17th of June. Thank you.
So in Washington State, as of yesterday, there are 26,158 confirmed cases of COVID-19. 1,221 people have died. In Thurston County, as of yesterday, we have 197 confirmed COVID cases. 173 of those residents are no longer under public health quarantine or isolation and are assumed to be recovering. 27 have been hospitalized during the course of their illness. Dr. Yu will provide further details on current hospitalizations. 4 people have unfortunately died. 3 out of those 4 deaths have been due to congregate care outbreaks. We continue to have 2 congregate care setting outbreaks. Testing, there have been 11,414 tests. We remain at 2% positive for tests. And with that, I will pass it over to our Acting Health Officer, Dr. Diana Yu, to provide further information and details about what she plans to present to you tomorrow.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm actually going to give you an update on the long-term care outbreak. So this actually started the same day that we entered we discovered the outbreak the same day that we entered Phase 2, which was a bad coincidence. We did testing in a large long-term care facility on the 27th and the 28th of May. And then we went back in and did another round of testing last week on Monday. During our first round of testing, so the outbreak began with 1 staff person and 1 resident testing positive. And when we went in to do more testing, we had another 10 staff members and 7 residents test positive that first round. Um, and then the second round of testing that we did last week, we ended up with 3 um, folks who turned positive. So altogether in this outbreak on the large congregate care setting, well, yeah, we had 13 residents test positive. Of those 13 um, residents, we've had 6 that have been hospitalized or are currently hospitalized, and 3 deaths. Um, we had 15 staff members test positive. 9 of them that live in Thurston County, so are included in our numbers. 6 of them are from outside of our county. They live outside of our county. Of these 15 staff members, 1 was hospitalized and is at home recovering. We also had at least 8 people who were contacts of the cases related to the outbreak that have been diagnosed. And but if we look at the state database for the outbreak, there are 10 more people that are listed on there. The number, 10 more in number, that may have been associated with this outbreak and likely are from outside of our county because we don't have that information. So, so altogether, there are 36 individuals that have been diagnosed as part of the outbreak in the larger long-term care center. And we are still continuing to monitor, and this will go on. The time when we decide that an outbreak is finished is when we have gone through 2 incubation period cycles. So the close monitoring continues until we've reached the 2 incubation period cycles without a new case. So the last new cases were diagnosed on the 8th of June. So 2 incubation cycles is going to take us into early July. And every time we find a new case, moves the target a little bit. So, I mean, it is unfortunate, and I've been asked by my colleagues why our numbers in Thurston County is so low compared to their counties, and you know, one of the reasons and is because we have not had a large long-term care outbreak, which we do now. But you know, it's you know, in public health, my job is to stop outbreaks. My job. I mean, that's one of the main pieces of the role and responsibility of the health officer. And you know, in order to stop outbreaks, one of the first things that we do is work on prevention. Prevention is pretty much sending out the messages, the information, getting people to know what to do so that they do not become infected, because it's so much better to not get infected than to try to deal with the repercussions of having an infection. But prevention relies almost 100%, well, 95% on the people that are receiving that message, cooperating and doing what they need to do to prevent the disease. I can't prevent it for you. I can only give you the information and ask that you do it. And it is so important. And this is one of the pieces, because as we see in this in this outbreak, when it reaches our highly vulnerable folks, we're going to get a lot more hospitalizations and death. And even though they've lived a long life, a lot of these folks, nobody should be dying of an infectious disease. I mean, we shouldn't count them out. And a lot of these folks, a lot of our elderly are um, trying to protect themselves. And it's very unfortunate that, you know, they have to stay cloistered, they have to stay away, they have to stay home longer than anybody else because they're at risk, they're at higher risk. The other part of my responsibility is responding to an outbreak, responding quickly, uh, finding out about them, identifying that there's an outbreak, identifying the disease, and controlling it, imposing isolation and quarantine, finding the contacts and getting them quarantined so that they do not infect others in case they get sick. So, so lately, our numbers after we entered into phase, we had 133 cases before we went into phase three, and since phase three, in the last 2.5 weeks, we've had, I think it's about what. Uh, 64 cases now. Um, that's a lot, but we can handle it. Our public health system is excellent. We have a lot of staff that are trained to do case and contact investigation. We also have a huge cadre of volunteers. We have responded to the outbreak. We've been able to mount up response. We continue to go out, and our community. There's a lot of possibilities for testing. Our hospitals remain at having capacity to take care of COVID patients. Um, we we are going out and testing in some areas where people have less access to testing. Um, and the biggest problem that I continue to see is our community's response, the response of the individuals in our community. I will be recommending that we move, that we send the application. Um, I don't know if it's going to be approved for a lot of the things that is required of public health. I think we meet those metrics. We meet the guidelines that we need to meet in order to move to phase three in terms of our response. But the numbers are going up, and they're going up because our community is not responding. So I'm asking everybody, because I don't have doubts. I'm tired of COVID. Unfortunately, COVID is not done with me. It's still going to be around, and people need to keep their distance. People need to wear a face covering when they're out in public, if they can. Some people cannot, and I understand that. People need to continue to wash their hands. They need to continue to clean areas, things are contaminated. They continue to need to avoid touching their eyes and their face. And if they're sick, they need to stay home. And they need to avoid crowds, because when you're in a crowded situation, it's harder to keep your physical distance, and it's harder to know what you're exposed to. Um, but the two most important pieces is keeping that distance and wearing your face covering. And people just need to do it. I will not hesitate to recommend that we move back to phase two, even if we're approved to move to phase three. If the numbers continue to go the way they are, and people continue to disregard the prevention messages, because I don't want any more deaths. I don't want more hospitalizations. You don't, you don't want more people to die from COVID, because it is preventable. it is preventable, but we individually have to take the actions to prevent it. Um, so, you know, I, I think I just morphed from my report into my phase 3 information, but we will meet tomorrow and go over the phase 3 application. But I really think that we have a lot of work to do. And by the we, I always say, you know, the public part of public health is everybody. People think, you know, it's my job or Shelley's job, our job to do public health. There is a reason why it says public health. It's everybody. So everybody in the public has to do what they need to do to keep us all healthy. So
Well, thank you, Doctor.
that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And thank you for defining your role and knowing how smart you are and caring and empathetic. I know you're passionate about this, about protecting public health, and I greatly appreciate that. And I'm somewhat dismayed when I see pictures posted on Facebook of local county establishments that are reopening now, and I see people that are obviously not family members grouped around a table in restaurants and such, unmasked, and just carrying on as usual, and not, in my opinion, not taking it seriously enough. And we can't just say, "Hey, we're tired of COVID. Let's open things up and get going again." It doesn't work that way. We are fighting a deadly virus, a pandemic, and we are fighting for survival on a planet that's very indifferent to our own survival. The planet doesn't care about us, but we need to protect ourselves and each other. I'm dismayed at the young adults that I see and the number of youth that I've seen in the last couple months. I remember that contracted COVID-19. I remember when we were double digits, when we were in the 40s and 50s and 70s, and now we're now knocking on the door of 200 with 4 deaths. And I'm compassionate enough to, you're right, I do care about public health and the safety of our citizens. So we can move forward and progress through the phases and not regress and move backward. But it's not just, it's a decision based on science and the best evidence and in the public interest to protect health, whether we move forward or not. And so I thank you for what you're doing for our county, and just not only, I don't want to say admonishment, but you're encouraging people, take it seriously and do what you can so we can continue to open up more and more. When I see 17% increase in sales, in retail sales throughout the country, I think that's a great sign already. But it can progress if we take it seriously and still protect ourselves and do it responsibly. So thank you for that. Commissioner Mensard, any questions or comments for Dr. Diana, you or Shelley Slaughter?
No, I just say that I had a chance to do a 15-minute interview on Thurston County Media yesterday for the Stay Healthy Thurston County show. And I think the message, I was able to get a lot of information out there in that time. And I think my message was consistent with Dr. Hughes about, you know, one piece of what we're doing in the community is opening back up, but what we need to do on a personal level should be exactly the same and just as diligent as where we started. And if we can do that, then we can really move on 2 fronts. But if it's just an across the board, well, we're kind of, you know, this is behind us, then it's not going to work for anyone. It's going to hurt us in any number of ways. So we need to I just keep beating that drum, and hopefully the community is going to see that this is in everybody's interest. Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards, I see you've arrived. Any questions or comments?
Just the fact that we're doing more testing has to give us more positive results, though, doesn't it? I'm trying to figure out how that fits in on a per capita or what. I mean, I don't see that we're ever going to get away from increasing numbers as long as we're always increasing the number of tests.
Mm-hmm. So my response to that is true. We continue to remain at 2% positive. as we test more people, our numbers will increase. The difference is when you look at the day-to-day numbers of folks that we are seeing. We used to be, we have been continuing to do about the same number, maybe just a little bit more testing. But we were at 0 to 2 cases a day, and now we're about, it's at the last week or so, we've been at 4 to 5, even up to 7 cases in a day. We had our biggest spike definitely with the long-term care outbreak. But as we see, the staff members who are part of the long-term care outbreak live in our communities, and they have household contacts, and those contacts are also getting infected. They're also part of our community. So one of the things is we can say, okay, well, a lot of this is due to the long-term care outbreak. But we have to remember that our long-term care staff still live in our community. And there are, continues to be more cases. The last couple of days, the cases were not related to long-term care. And when you look at them, they're younger individuals. And they're more from social contact. We try to figure out where people are getting infected. And it's not, a lot of it is we might not know, but with many of them, it is with contacts that they've had with people when they're not wearing a mask and whether they're not so physically distancing themselves. Household, we understand because you live in the same household. There's so many things to touch, and sometimes it's unavoidable. But friends, uh, these infections are preventable.
Is there any direct correlation between the time frame in which all the protest activity started and the numbers going up? Are we seeing anything there?
Well, we do ask when we're doing our contact investigation about, gatherings, crowds, protests, parties, and of course, we're assuming that the answers are all 100% truthful. We have not, as far as I know, have not had anyone admit to having been in protests. We do ask that, and it's not in public health, we ask you questions. There's nothing punitive about it. There's no reason to not, admit freely, because it does make an impact on how we investigate diseases. So I hope everybody who's listening today understands that when public health actually asks you, we're not the police. We're not doing anything that's going to, our main goal is to protect other people. Our main goal is to make sure that the disease does not spread. So being as forthcoming as you can be and tell us, where you've been, who you've been with, is very important because we want to protect other people. But that's a long answer, Commissioner.
Okay, I have just one final question. Is there any change in the rate of hospitalization that we're actually utilizing hospital beds?
Only because we had the long-term care outbreak. So all of the hospitalizations recently, we've had a sharp rise in the number. Our hospitals do have the capacity. That's not a problem. But they're almost all of them. I think there's one that's not related to the long-term care outbreak, but the rest of them are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Go ahead, Ty.
A follow-up question. I wasn't able, I know the governor did a couple, I think he did at least, I know he did one and maybe two press conferences related to the demonstrations across the state. And I didn't hear whether whether there was any comment about, the directive of not being, even in phase 3, you're not supposed to gather in a more than 50-person group. So did he comment on the propriety of these demonstrations in light of the limitation on groups?
I was not able to listen to his press conference. I read about it. I know that a couple of different jurisdictions, like in Seattle, King County, they've made it available for folks who were in protests and rallies to actually go get tested if they wanted to. And I think for us, I think that would be a similar recommendation if you have been to a protest or rally and have been in big crowds, have been in settings where you were not protected because you were within 6 feet, somebody came within 6 feet of you, and or somebody coughed on you, and you start having symptoms, go and get tested. Go and get tested early. Because the earlier you get tested, and definitely once you start feeling not well, stay home. And, other than going to get your test, because it's important to identify it early. And, Shelley, I don't know if anybody was able to listen to the press conferences that he had.
I was not either. I was in another meeting at that time.
Well, Doc, I have a question because you operate at the level of the rooftop when it comes to international and national science and medicine. You're way up here, and I rely on mainstream media, so I'm on the first floor of the basement. Are we still looking at a vaccine sometime in 2021?
There are a number of vaccine trials that are going on right now. So they have, there's been a lot of work on a lot of fronts on creating different kinds of vaccines. Vaccines can be created to fight against the outer envelope of the virus, or the inside of the virus, or the little pieces that connect to the virus. So there's a lot of different ways to to stop a virus from multiplying. So they are working on that. Developing the vaccine is not as the time that it takes for a vaccine to come out and be used is the safety and efficacy of the test. We can only know if it works if we test it and try to infect people and they don't get infected. But nowadays that's not ethical to do that, purposefully infect people. So and then the safety issue is one that takes a little bit of time. So if we come out with a vaccine too quickly and it is not safe, the safety studies have not been done, we run the problems like we did with the swine flu vaccine in the 70s, where they came out with a vaccine, went out, and they had a lot of complications from the vaccine. So, the science sometimes is very quick, but the studies on the effectiveness and the safety of the vaccine is very important before we roll it out. Because there's a lot of interest in people getting it. So there are individuals, they're doing vaccine studies up in Seattle. They have folks that are, have volunteered to get the experimental vaccines. So it is out there. But, at some point, I'm not that high up.
Well, you're much higher level than I am. But it still seems like all the trials and the tests that go on in the research on the results of the trials or tests, that it's going to be a minimum of 6 months to a year before we maybe get something that's viable.
And actually, when you think of influenza vaccine is about a 9-month turnaround, and that's really quick.
Wow. Okay.
And we often think it's too slow, but with a brand new vaccine. And, the other thing is, coronavirus is such a common virus. So when they're testing the vaccine, they may find that it prevents the regular cold viruses, but not the COVID. So,
Yeah. Well, we are very impatient people. And when people complain that minute rice takes too long to cook, that just shows you how impatient we are.
but that is the reality, is that we all know that we need to live with COVID because COVID is here. And so continuing to restrict ourselves in our homes and not do things is not, we can't, we're very social beings, humans are. It's very, very hard for us to continue to stay and not do things. It's been 3 months. But if we take personal responsibility and we care enough for our neighbors and friends and others, put on a face covering, then I think we can do it. I think we can do it safely, but we need to do it safely and smartly and responsibly.
Yeah. It's been 3 months, but it seems like 20 minutes underwater for many people. So thank you very much. Shelley, anything final thoughts?
No, sir. Thank you.
Romero, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just to conclude this item, Commissioners, and to follow up on what Shelley and you stated, for the viewing public's benefit, I have convened a special meeting of the Board of Health tomorrow, 9 o'clock. And at that point, you will consider passing a resolution concurrent with Dr. Yu's recommendation to apply for phase 3. At 9:30 tomorrow morning, I have also scheduled a meeting for the Board of County Commissioners for you also to consider, if the Board of Health approves that resolution, for you to concur with the Board of Health resolution to apply for phase 3. As you heard from Shelley and Dr. Yu, I think everything is lining up in a way to be able to submit an application by noon or shortly thereafter tomorrow, June 17th, which is the first day that we can apply to move into phase 3 in accordance to the governor's plan. That's all I had on that.
All right. Thank you, Doctor, and thank you, Shelley. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the homeless strategies.
Kurt may have an update on this.
Oh, Kurt. Go ahead, Kurt. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. Wanted to add in the discussion that we continue to have on PPE out of the Emergency Coordination Center. The PPE requirements continue to go down. As an example, both hospitals during the month of May reconnected with their supply chain, so they are completely off of receiving PPE or supplies or resources from the county ECC. So I anticipate, as we draw this down and the smaller healthcare providers are able to reconnect with the supply chains, we should be out of the PPE business of distribution here shortly in the next several weeks. Now the key component in the future is preparing for a potential second wave of stockpiling or storing and replacing the PPE that we expended.
Okay. Any questions of Kurt? No, Kurt, thank you very much for staying on top of all this too, as well. I know you guys are hopping down there at the EOC as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thank all your staff down there, would you?
All the time, they do a great job.
Yes, please.
Thank you. All right, homeless strategies. Keely, you're on.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino, Thurston County Homeless Prevention and Affordable Housing Coordinator. A brief updates today. So we are moving forward with testing, doing some remote testing events. We had one at Union Gospel Mission on Thursday and at Ensign Road on Friday. Those will be repeating for the next 2 weeks to finish in June. Both were very successful. We housed 3 people in the quarantine and isolation facility, and they were all negative and they've all been discharged at this time. We'll continue to operate quarantine and isolation. It's been, we're fine tuning as we go along. And so every new admittance or intake provides another opportunity to learn and grow and nuance our response. We are in the process actively seeking long-term quarantine and isolation facility to keep us going until there is an end to this COVID response. We're looking at either leasing long-term or purchasing a facility. Tom Webster is working with the county's real estate broker to identify properties, and we're also working, again, closely in conjunction with the City of Olympia staff to just consult and work on that process. We'll be posting positions soon and hiring staff for the long-term quarantine isolation facility. So those should be posting imminently. We're working still with the homeless crisis response system in the City of Olympia, in particular, to really look at racial equity response to COVID-19, as well as just homeless crisis response in general. As I've mentioned before, the Department of Commerce's shelter program grant that should be released for our response here by the end of June has that as a requirement, and they're taking it seriously, and it not being a check the box kind of situation, but rather to really think about the ways in which we operate our homeless crisis response system equitably. We will be convening we will be providing recommendations rather to the Health and Human Services Council in July regarding recommendations for funding awards. The second year contracts for those that were awarded last year for the $2163 will be moving forward at full amount at this time. As Tom Webster says, he's cautiously optimistic that those budget amounts or those award amounts shouldn't see any reduction at this time. We do not anticipate that. And we are continuing to fine tune our recommendations for cold weather sheltering response. We will have our final conversation with the Hazardous Weather Task Force next Friday to ensure that our recommendations moving forward are working in tandem with the homeless crisis response system and the cold weather shelters.
All right. Is the 2828 Martin Way, is that Lehigh?
Lehigh will be operating shelter and permanent supportive housing once they have constructed it. That's my kid. The construction for that permanent building and facility will begin in October. So currently there is a shelter that is operating there temporarily until that time.
Okay, and that's designed to house, is it 60 units?
Correct, 60 units.
120 people?
Yep, 60 units of permanent supportive housing, although the number of shelter beds has decreased slightly, I think by 7 or 8 beds, just to accommodate for physical distancing requirements. So Meg Martin, the executive director of Interfaith Works, has met with Sharon Lee, the executive director of Lehigh, to create a new model to ensure that moving forward, that shelter will be able to safely physically distance.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Edwards, is he still here?
Yeah, he is.
There you are.
Haven't went anywhere.
Okay, do you have any questions or comments, Keely?
No, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Menser, anything?
No, thank you.
Wow, we're in awe, Keely. Thank you very kindly.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Looking at the agenda, we'll review the draft agenda. The June 16th meeting this afternoon is canceled. We'll be getting through that here shortly. And so my question for the board is the week of June 23rd, that's next Tuesday. Do we want to cancel that? We're doing this a week at a time.
Commissioners, my recommendation is for you to consider canceling. We don't know if we're going to be approved or to move it into phase 3. That's when county office will open to the public. And also we're waiting for some guidance from the governor related to the OPMA waivers. So my recommendation for you to consider canceling the formal meeting for next week. If we get approval, then it will put us in the position to have a formal Board of County Commissioners meeting in the afternoon by the 29th.
And that's a wise recommendation, because even though we apply tomorrow, that Dr. Weisman won't even get to these. There's several counties at the same time that are applying tomorrow for moving into phase 3. And we won't even get a response or reply probably until the end of the week. So that wouldn't even give us sufficient time to set things up. And I saw the email regarding, we still don't know whether OPMA is going to be extended or not. So I agree with that recommendation. I turned to my seatmates. You okay with canceling June 23rd, BoCC? Commissioner Minister, thumbs up, thumbs up. Commissioner Edwards, thumbs up. Okay. So the face-to-face June 23rd BoCC is canceled, and we will still meet on Zoom and continue the business of the county. So, well, for the items next week, we've got 2 of them. The first is approve Paradigm Scalehouse accounting software upgrade.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. The Solid Waste Division of Public Works have utilized this Paradigm software system, which currently we have a version of 5.0. The Paradigm system was deployed in the county in 2008, and obviously with not necessarily significant updates since. So as the technology evolves and moves quicker than we would like to admit, there is a need to upgrade this new version. The upgrade is approximately $116,000 with an approximately maintenance cost of $19,000 annually. So this funding is going to be covered by the tip-in fees, the solid waste fund, and staff is asking for you to consider authorizing moving ahead with the upgrade of the Paradigm system, which is, I believe it is essential for us to do that. And also this upgrade, what it's going to allow us is on the 2 locations, satellite locations that we have in the county right near Rochester, what we call the drop boxes. By having this, the new software will give us the ability to better manage the public refuse when they come in. And also we're planning to do some small upgrades on those 2 facilities that will allow us to be more, what I call exact in terms of how much refuse the citizens will bring and how much we charge for those services. I believe Karen Weiss is here to answer any questions related to this proposal.
Go ahead, Karen. Do you have anything to add to Romero's presentation?
Well, actually, I want to give Mark McElroy, the solid waste manager, the opportunity to do it, if he'd like. I mean, I will just add that from the accounting and operations standpoint, this is a critical system for us to, bill our customers correctly. We have several manual processes that we are doing right now associated with the Hazo House, who's not actually wired for this service at this point. And for some of our commercial customers. So this is just an opportunity for efficiencies and customer value all the way down the line from the beginning to the end. But I'm going to go ahead and let Mark speak to the operational aspects out at the facilities. And then if at the end you have questions for me from the financial standpoint, I'd be happy to talk to about it.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Commissioners. Really, it's critical for us from an operational standpoint because it is the backbone for our system. It tells us how well we're doing. It's our ability to articulate everything to our stakeholders, and it's the way for us to do outreach with every aspect of the community. And so, it's a 20-year-old system, and it's a proprietary system, and they will not be supporting this system in the future. So without it, we will become really, dysfunctional. And so operationally also, we believe that there's a camera device that we plan to implement. And so we think that that's going to allow us to do less hand-to-hand transactions with customers. And we think that's going to add safety value to the community and to our staff. So I think that's a real benefit. And that's really all I have to say. But I think that's a lot of value add. Thank you.
Mark, for the record, will you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Mark McElroy, Solid Waste Manager.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments for either Mark or Karen? No?
Yes, the dollar amount.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that, Mark,
160?
for next week, if you can update the recommended action to include the costs. As I
Yes,
saw.
sir.
Okay, so we'll bring that, next week with the actual cost of the action.
Well, the initial cost of 160 and the 19,000 annually.
Yeah,
And where it's coming from.
solid waste fund.
Right, I got that, but that include that? That'd be great, thank you. Commissioner mention anything? Okay. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Mark. Okay, thank you very much. Number 2 is extend provisions of ordinance 15887, mitigating conditions caused by COVID-19.
Yeah, Commissioners, as a result of the emergency COVID-19, the Board of County Commissioners adopted an ordinance number 51887 on April 2nd, 2020. This particular ordinance authorized Public Works to take actions and take reasonable steps necessary to mitigate the conditions of this emergency that have an impact on the ratepayers on our utilities that we manage. Those include the Grand Mound, Boston Harbor, Thomason, Olympic View, and so some of the strategies the board approved to ease perhaps the burden of this emergency of the ratepayers was suspension of water shutoffs for 60 days, suspension of fees and delinquent notices hangers for 60 days, the suspension of penalty and interest charges for 90 days, extension of payment plans terms for delinquent customers for 6 months or 12 months that move, and also payment plan interest waiver for plans current agreements or new agreements enter prior to June 30th, 2020. Ordinance 51887 had a sunset date of June 26, 2020. That is coming up. But on May 29, 2020, Governor Inslee signed a proclamation 2023.4, which in part states that we need to continue to provide some assistance to those individuals that might be in need as a result of this emergency, which include utility extension and terminations and delinquent fees. So as a result of the governor's action, this extended to July 28, 2020. So the proposed action for you to consider next week is to align this ordinance with the governor's mandate to extend that until July 28, 2020. And I believe Tim is here to answer any questions related to this proposal.
All right, and that is ordinance number 15887.
That is correct.
Go ahead, Tim.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager, Public Works. And as a reminder, we also have Karen Weiss, the Financial and Asset Manager here. Yeah, Ramiro summed this up very, very well. The board had already passed ordinance 15887. The impacts to the utilities thus far have been relatively minimal, although the mitigation that allows for our customers that are in need is important. And we are, with this extension, just trying to come in alignment with this proclamation or any future proclamations by the governor that extends this relief.
All right, any questions or comments of Tim or Karen on this matter? No? No?
No.
Okay, thank you very kindly then. That takes care of that.
Thank you.
Go forth, thank you. That takes us to proclamations and awards. And I don't think we have any, do we?
No, sir.
Nope. Advisory boards and commissions.
Nothing for your consideration at this point.
Nope. That takes us now to PIO check-in. Brian, in the house?
Good morning, Commissioners. County
Good morning.
Manager. Brian Dominique, Public Information Officer for the board. Don't have a lot of updates for you today, just a few quick ones. A temporary public information specialist has been hired, and she'll be dedicated to the COVID-19 response and recovery through December 31st, 2020. Her name is Megan Johnson, and her first day is today, so we're happy to have her on board.
Ooh, Megan.
And Megan Porter, our public information supervisor, will continue to oversee the activities of the PIO office for the incident management team, but hopes to be back just sharing her time with the courthouse the next few weeks. So we should have her back with us soon. And then on Friday, the board released a letter to the community about the ongoing demonstrations across the country. That letter was shared on social media and also appeared in several of our local media outlets. And a quick census update, our census response rate is now at 69.8%, which is up 0.2% from last Tuesday. So that's exciting news. And you know, the results of the 2020 census, as you know, will inform decisions about how hundreds of billions of dollars in funding from the federal government allocated to communities across the country. So the results are really important. So anyone who hasn't taken the census yet, I encourage them to go to 2020census.gov and complete their census today. And that concludes my brief.
10 minutes, 10 questions. Very simple to get the census done. It impacts so many here locally. The Commissioner Menser, do you have any questions or comments for the PIO for Brian? Nope. Okay. Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Brian, so we have, what's Megan's, the new PIO, Megan Johnson, is it?
Yes, sir.
So we got Megan and Brian? Okay. Good. And so she's at the EOC or ECC now, today?
Yes, I believe so. I'm not specifically sure her location, but.
Very good. Well, if Megan's watching, welcome aboard, Megan. And that's that. I have nothing for you, Brian. Thank you very kindly. Legislative update. Nothing?
No much of an update, commissioners. We're just waiting to see when a special session will be convening, and I will keep you posted as soon as I hear that.
All right. Next on the agenda is the all of our decisions pending, and motions and actions and discussion, and then commissioner items. This is probably, we're just about an hour into this, so let's take a 10-minute break. 10 minutes. We'll come back and we will just horse our way through this thing. So we'll be back at 10:05 hours. Thank you. And welcome back after that quick 10-minute break. It's June 16th, 2020. We're continuing on with the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session, and we're moving into the briefing and public hearing pending, decisions pending. The first one is briefing the 2021 internal service rates briefing.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, joining us is Assistant County Manager, Budget Director, Robin Campbell. So go ahead, Ramiro.
Yeah, following up with the briefing that you received this past week on June 11th, it was related to the internal services rates, which includes two elements of that, the central services for facilities, building facilities, and the IT rate. As you may recall, this is an exercise that we have to go through every year in preparation to the budget. I do ask the board to give us direction today as to how you would like to proceed on those rates, because we need to add those on the budget instructions and the call for budgets, which the call for budgets is scheduled for this Thursday, where the county auditor and myself officially begin the budget process for the 2021-2022. On your packet, you have a copy of the presentation the staff gave to the board last week. As you may recall, one of the biggest expenses on the increases on the facilities, central services, was the FJC, the Family Justice Center, to start addressing some of the building needs on that. At the end of that meeting, you asked staff to come back with alternatives. And the alternatives were perhaps presented to you will be if the FJC cost that was presented to you last week is taken out, meaning we delay that for perhaps next year or perhaps longer. But I believe the board clearly understands the risks of delaying investments on those facilities. So I don't want to get too much into that risk assessment. And just to give you an example, if we take the FJC out of the central services rates, the increase will drop to 5.7%. And the IT cost remains at the same cost, which is 3.6%. That was, I believe, the alternative option that you requested from staff. And Robin is here to follow up with additional information and maybe mitigate or correct me if I was off on my framing.
Go ahead, Robin.
There is one other change that brings the rates down to that amount. Part of your decisions for the budget reductions is to eliminate administrative positions that had been approved for the information technology department. So a second adjustment that we made to these rates was to take out those administrative positions, that's accounting, budget, and clerical support. IT currently has none and are sharing those supports with central services. So the updated option before you takes out the FTEs that would provide that type of support to IT, continues the shared administrative support with central services and information technology departments. And as Romero said, removes the increase in building reserve collections for the FJC. The combined effect of that is to reduce the central services increase to 5.7% and the IT increase to 3.6%. And as you see in your packet, the original estimate on page 2 was a central services joining the conference 20.6%, and IT was a 5.3% increase. Another question that page 2 of the packet that is part of your packet today that we reviewed last Thursday.
And so I'm looking at page 2 on the bottom. For central services and IT, the increase. And what does the change then do by removing FJC?
So if you remove the FJC and make the administrative changes that I just described, the central service increase is 5.7% and the IT increase is 3.6%.
Okay, thank you.
Robin, can I remind myself of something that we talked about last time, which was that that number that we're playing with right there is really just kind of an aggregate agglomeration of different of the different numbers. It's not really a number that any particular department would be paying. They're going to pay based on, like in the FJC situation, they were going to be paying more because of the need for the upgrades to their facility. So therefore, I guess what I'm getting at is they were the ones that would really benefit in a certain way from this change. The other departments may not have been paying that kind of a rate.
That's absolutely correct. Every office and department will have a variable increase, if you will, depending on the inventory of items that they use from these two departments and the level of service that they receive from these departments. So what you see here is an aggregate increase. It's not what any particular office or department would be paying. I do want to add though, when internal service rates are determined and approved by the board, the amount is distributed to every office and department, and the board increases the appropriation of every office and department to be able to pay the rates. So it's not as if any office or department has to absorb those rates within their current appropriations.
So FJ, just use this example because it seems like the big enchilada in this whole thing. FJC Superior Court would prefer to have that, probably, I'm just speculating, included, because they're going to get budget to pay for it, and they're going to want to see their facility maintained. Is that accurate?
That would be accurate, yes.
Versus them not wanting us to do that because they can't afford the huge spike in rate.
That's correct.
Yeah, because we would be funding that increase for them.
Right. The downside, of course, is an opportunity cost. If you fund this, then you will have less money to fund other things that offices and departments want and need.
So, hang on just a second, Romero and Gary. I'm going to go back. The FJC is 22 years old, the building, 22-ish.
Sounds right.
And what did we say last week it was going to cost to maintain it or fix it per year? How many millions?
We are estimating about $5 million over the next 5 years to make necessary repairs to keep the building functional.
Okay. Same dilemma that we were facing with the courthouse. You're not maintaining it, and it's getting worse in worse condition or bad repair.
Right, and you had asked me how much for the courthouse campus, a comparable number for the campus. Looking at the buildings 1, 2, and 3, and then items that are shared by those 3 buildings, the critical need is about $20 million. And if we look at the next 5 years, that amount increases to roughly $30 million for buildings 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So I had not added the needs for these buildings to the estimated rates because I think that those need to be addressed as part of phase or Plan B for the courthouse.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Romero first. He had his hand up, might be following up information that might help address your question or comment, Commissioner Edwards.
No, I think Robin follow up on what I needed to follow up. Commissioner Edwards got questions.
Go ahead, Gary.
The bottom line here is that we're trying to make up maintenance that's been neglected for basically 22 years. Is that right?
What we're trying to make up is the fact that money has not been set aside to conduct the maintenance over the last 22 years. Had the county been putting money away to do this work over the course of the years, you wouldn't be looking at $1 million increase this year.
And actually, on this proposal, we're trying to make up for that 22 years of lack of investment, I guess is the best way I can put it, putting money into ER&R for that building. You're trying to do it in 1 year, basically.
We're trying to do it over the course of 5 years because the need is $5 million. And we think that if we collect $5 million over 5 years, we can address the critical needs at the FJC.
Right, but we're still trying to do it in a relatively short time span. We're trying to make up a deficiency, is that right?
We are trying to have the money to make those repairs, yes. We're trying to put the money into savings to be able to pay for the repairs.
And I guess my concern is, I sympathize with the need, but we're being told the sky is falling, and I don't think this is the proper year to try to make up for 22 years of neglect. I guess that's where I'm coming from on that. If it wasn't for the COVID virus, possibly we could do this, but we don't know what's coming down the road. We don't know the new reality. So that is my concern about doing this, starting this process this year, trying to make up for 22 years of neglect. So that's my
Okay. And I would agree with that. The timing is just absolutely horrendous. As I've said before, worst time to remodel your house is when it's on fire. So we're trying to remodel the house, and the county economy is just on fire. So yeah, I'd rather put this off, that piece, considerably, even though it looks like, we haven't maintained it forever, and the commissioners didn't fund it, so no wonder they need a new building. I'll take that heat, but at this point in time, I just can't see doing that at this juncture. Commissioner Menser, anything?
Yeah, I see well, it's not related to your guys' point, but it is pertinent to say that I see a fundamental difference between the current court, we call the court complex, which we had a plan for trying to address, and we have a complex that's completely outlived its lifespan, versus FJC, which is a facility that is not anywhere near the end of its lifespan, and we need to maintain that facility. I don't want to be so, I didn't find the criticisms of decisions that were made regarding the court complex very persuasive, but I would find those arguments regarding FJC persuasive, is what I'm trying to get at. And I do understand that we have a lot of budget unknowns, but I do support adjusting the rates to make sure that we're doing the right things for maintenance of our infrastructure.
And I might add, that was thoughtful, and what I might add is that to put money aside to save a building, that could be used elsewhere to support some other function of government, whether it be people or jobs or health or whatever it is, wherever the money's going to come from, that can be diverted. I'd much rather do that than for a building at this point.
So, commissioners, what I have for you, what I'm hearing is, and I'd like for you to exercise your discretion. And again, this is a direction that we're looking today. What I'm hearing is that perhaps the initial proposal, which increases the central services rates to 20.6% for 2021, and the IT, internal services rate, increases by 5.3%. That is not what the board wants to proceed with. I'd like to hear that.
Thumbs up for me.
Not,
Not,
That we,
yeah.
okay,
that we do not want to increase that, correct?
Yeah,
Is that what you
yeah,
said?
That's
so
So it's a majority of the board. I'm not in line with the others.
I captured that about Commissioner.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing then, the new proposal, which increases the central services rate to 5.7% and the IT rates to 3.6%, I'd like to see a thumbs up from the board, a thumbs down on that. Okay, thank you. 2-1. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're moving into action items, and I'm going to turn to the county manager, Ramiro Chavez, first.
Thank you, commissioners. Before you start having your conversation and taking some actions, before you, I'd just like to address a couple letters that you received from Mr. Pettit. And one is related to the posting the agendas and the modifications of the agendas on your regular meeting. So let me read this, the part of the statute, and this is RCW 42.30.077. Agendas of regular meetings. This is your regular meeting. And I'm gonna read verbatim of this statute. Public agencies with governing bodies must make the agenda of each regular meeting of the governing body available online no later than 24 hours in advance of the published start time of the meeting, which we have done. An agency subject to provisions in this section is not required to post an agenda if it does not have a website or if it employs fewer than full-time equivalent employees. That section does not apply to Thurston County. This section is important because Mr. Pettit argues that perhaps we cannot amend the agenda after the 24-hour publication. Nothing in this section prohibits subsequent modifications to agendas nor invalidates any other legal action taken at a meeting where the agenda was not posted in accordance with this section. I believe that addresses one aspect of Mr. Pettit's letter. The other aspect is the attached documentation that he requests. I believe that we have, upon request to any citizen, we have made available any type of documents related to the upcoming agendas. Mr. Pettit has exercised that request on many occasions. We have made those documents available, and as many other citizens. And we will continue to make those supporting documents available upon request to any citizen, including Mr. Pettit. That's all I wanted to state on that.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then, the first action is, number 1 is third quarter budget amendment.
Commissioners, this is for your consideration. This has been a long discussion related to the third quarter budget amendment. You met in a couple of occasions on this, and you went item by line item where you exercise your discretion of your vote in each of those items. I'm not expecting you to, hopefully it can give you how you voted on each individual items, but the overall, the attachment for you reflects the overall majority of the board voting on those specific items. So at this point, I will let Robin follow up on the proposal before you.
Thank you, Romero and commissioners. Before you is the budget amendment number 3 for this biennium. And I'm looking for the totals for our resolution. The total change in general fund Sorry, commissioners, that I'm not a little more prepared today. But I am not seeing the subtotal for the general fund change. So the change in general fund expenditures is approximately $1.2 million. There's a decrease in revenue of approximately 300,000. There are also associated changes in other funds for our operating budget. In capital, the changes in central services, all of this is in non-general fund. The amendment is increased in central services $1.5 million, and in public works, increase in capital costs of $8.6 million. And I would be happy to answer any questions related to any of the changes that were reviewed in the last two work sessions.
Go ahead, Ty.
Robin, did you get any clarity on that, the prosecutor's item that I discussed about the $50,000 grant? They hired a different level employee than what had been budgeted, and there was going to be a corresponding, according to the prosecutor, a corresponding reduction in expenditure, but that wasn't reflected on our sheets.
I do not have that right now, Commissioner, but I will follow up on it.
Okay.
Gary, any questions?
I guess my questions would be, are we covering all the issues? And we had differing votes during that time. All those votes are reflected in here? Is that what I'm told, been told?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
then,
all requests were approved.
okay. And then on the resolution that we're talking about adopting, it's a pretty short one, just a couple of whereases in there, but nothing about the COVID-19, and so there's no effect here at all with revenue or expenditures to do with COVID-19.
The only changes related to COVID-19 there are about 3 of the federal grants that are reflected in this amendment. There is money from the CARES Act specifically for elections. There is funding also from the CARES Act specifically for law enforcement, protective equipment, and there is funding for public health that goes through the Washington State Department of Public Health. I believe that is also a result of the CARES Act. What is not in this budget amendment is anything having to do with the impact of COVID-19 on our revenues. There is also not an appropriation in Amendment 3 for the Coronavirus Relief Fund, CRF, otherwise often called the Treasury CARES funding, but its formal name is the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That's the $15.7 million that the board has just allocated. Those items will all be in Amendment 4, which will come to you in late July or early August.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that we weren't referring to a particular problem that we're all dealing with. So,
No, we're still trying to figure out the magnitude of that problem.
So most likely you will see another budget amendment in late July, early August.
okay.
All right. So any other questions or comments? Nope, okay. Is there a motion?
Commissioner Edwards will need to mention.
Oh yeah, Commissioner Edwards. Thank you.
Okay, I would move to approve a resolution for amendment number 3 of the 2019-2020 biennial budget.
And I second that motion. And it's been moved and seconded to approve the third quarter budget amendment number 3. Any further discussion? Yes, go ahead, Ty.
So I'm not supporting the motion, the amendment, for two reasons. One, there was about $600,000 in total spending, but that's a borderline call, and that happened last year, and I voted for the budget amendments. That's really not the tipping point for me. The tipping point is that the budget amendment process did not reflect a consistent level of oversight of all offices and departments of county government. There's one standard of oversight or scrutiny if you do a job where you might get a brick thrown at you, and there's a different standard if not. And I'm not okay with that. And I don't think that anyone who watched our budget deliberations last week would conclude that there's even a pretense of oversight, certain offices. So based on that process, I can't support this amendment.
Okay, and I respect your opinion, your views. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 2, Thurston County Procurement Policy Update.
Yeah, I briefly introduced this item for your consideration last week. And at that point, the staff was not ready to bring this matter before you. And since our attorney was in the process of reviewing it, there has been some modifications since last time. So I will ask Robin to walk you through as to what the updated procurement policy really does. And attached in your documents are some of the all the main elements of the proposal.
Thank you. I will, looking at mainly attachments A and B of the procurement policy, the COVID-19 finance team is recommending to the Board of County Commissioners, with the concurrence of the Financial Management Committee, that the board update the contract thresholds in the county procurement policy to align with federal and state laws. At the time the policy was adopted a couple of years ago, we had aligned with the laws at that time. And then after we had this policy in place for about a year, the state and federal laws changed. So at this time, when we are attempting to purchase quite a bit of equipment and supplies in response to the pandemic, we feel that it's very important that these thresholds be aligned with state and federal laws. So we are increasing the federal contracts to go through public works that are funded with federal awards. Anything less than $250,000 would go through a small works or simplified process, and anything above $250,000 would be a formal competitive bid. For public works with non-federal money that it's funding the project, the simplified or simple process for small works would be up to $350,000, and anything over that would be for a formal bid. And then for purchases of supplies, material, equipment, and services, we would not require any type of formal process for items less than $10,000. Anything between $10,000 and $50,000 would be the need for 3 bids off the vendor list, and then anything above $50,000 would go through a formal bid process. That is the major change that's being made. We have reformatted attachment B to be a little easier for the users to read. But other than those changes, all of the main elements of the procurement policy will remain the same.
All right, any questions of Robin? Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
There's quite a bit of information here on attachments A and attachments B. Do you have particular highlights on which ones there's change and which ones there's not? Is there I guess what I'm looking for is what's the time frame that we have to do this? And we didn't review this, you know, in depth at all. So I'm curious, what are we up against here?
So the only thing that is changing is the dollar thresholds. That is the one and only change. All the rest of the things that you see on these attachments remain the same. So the only thing we've changed is the dollar amounts. The FMC and the COVID fiscal team are asking the board to pass this now. They had asked for it to be done 2 weeks ago, but it had to go through legal review. And again, the only change is the dollar amounts to ensure that they align with federal and state laws.
And again, the time frame requirement that we're up against, that we can't have time to review this. I guess that's my concern.
It is your prerogative, Commissioner. Should the board decide you want time to review these changes or discussion, you could certainly delay it.
So this passed legal muster. And are there people, organizations, entities waiting in the balance, waiting for us to approve this to get funding or to for procurement?
To be able to spend, specifically, we've been working with the auditor's office so that our auditor is able to use the federal CARES Act funding that is specific for elections.
And so until this is approved, we cannot do that.
It would be a much more burdensome process for the auditor without this change.
Okay.
Because the county thresholds had been much lower.
Right. Commissioner Menser, anything?
I support approving it.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay. So is there a motion?
Yes, I move to approve an updated Thurston County procurement policy.
Is there a second, Gary, or no?
No.
Okay, I second that motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve the Thurston County procurement policy update. Any further discussion? Nope. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion carries. Number 3, Capital Lake Estuary Agreement.
Yes, Commissioners, you reviewed this item last week. And this is for your consideration, final approval of a new local agreement between the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services and the county. And this is related to the EIS. So you may recall, the Department of Enterprise Services received funding to conduct an environmental impact statement to look up some options related as to how the Capital Lake should be explored. From the estuary point of view, to keep it as is, or perhaps as a hybrid. So the initial allocation by the legislature for this project was about 2 years ago. And at that point, the legislature did not fund fully what is needed to conduct a comprehensive environmental impact study, EIS. This past legislative session, 2020, the legislature passed additional funding to fully fund the EIS. And also within that context, there was a commitment by the 5 jurisdictions, including Thurston County, the cities, the port, Lot, as well as the Squaxin Island Tribe, to fund portions of that effort, not necessarily the EIS, but in the support aspect of the EIS. You had a discussion on this, and this proposal is for you to consider this in-local agreement, and the county's portion to support this effort is $60,000. The $60,000 is coming from the stormwater fees, stormwater management fees, which is already included, and you passed action of approving the amendment for the budget. So the revenue is there. It's not a general fund, and anyway, this is a follow-up, I believe, a commitment which the board signed a letter stating as such early in the year.
Okay, questions or comments?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
I guess my concern with this is that we have repeatedly asked EIS in their analysis to check and give us a report on the water quality from the upper Deschutes. And this still, they've kind of, they want to look the other way. I don't know, they've refused to study the upper Deschutes water quality issue. And I don't understand that. And maybe they would ask for more money if they would do that, but they're just saying, no, we don't need to do the upper Deschutes. And I think the contamination of the upper Deschutes by corporate application of chemicals could be a problem. We don't know if it's a problem or not, but we do know that there's too many nitrates and too much nutrient getting into Capitol Lake. And because of that, I can't support this expenditure because it doesn't go far enough to address the water quality issues at hand.
All right, Commissioner Mintz, or anything?
I think it was a 3-0 vote when we signed on to the commitment letter, so I'm kind of surprised, but I do support the agreement as proposed.
All right, is there a motion?
Yes, I move to approve an interlocal agreement with the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services related to interagency coordination for the development of an environmental impact study, EIS, related to Capitol Lake in an amount of $60,000.
I second that motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve the interlocal agreement for the EIS related to Capitol Lake, the amount of $60,000. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion carries. Number 4, authorize the sale of tax title property.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, Commissioner. And as you may recall, you authorized the county treasurer to be proactive and systematic as to how we can dispose of a tax title properties with the intent to go back into the tax rolls. So this particular proposal is a property located in 1307 Boardman Avenue Northwest, Olympia. That's on the west side of Olympia. And this property is just about 0.007 acres. That will be 10 feet by 32 feet. Obviously, it's unbuildable, and the underlying property owner, the nearby property owner, would like to purchase this. The treasurer's office did in fact had a foreclosure action with no bidders. And as a result of that, they can exercise their option to have private negotiation. And that's where we are at this point. And again, it's 0.007 acres. And for a total of $556.80, which includes all the fees and associated costs of this property. And Jeff Godman is here to answer any questions.
Treasurer Gadman, do you have anything to add, sir?
No, just I appreciate your consideration of this. This will be throwing another piece of property into active tax roll status where for the last 23 years, we haven't gotten anything out of it.
Yeah, thank you, sir, and applaud you for your efforts on the tax title properties. Any questions of the treasurer? Or comments? No? Okay, is there a motion?
I move to authorize the Thurston County Treasurer's Office to sell property number 33600200300 via private negotiation per RCW 3635-120, 3635-130, 3635-150, and County Code 2.105.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the sale of tax title property via negotiation to Eric Mapes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much for your consideration and approval of that.
Yep.
Thank you,
And
Jeff.
number 5, abolish petty cash fund.
Yeah, Commissioners, for your consideration is for you to consider abolishing petty cash fund in the Office of Public Defense. The Office of Public Defense had a $200 petty cash account fund that was intended to provide fee bus passes to their clients. Since Intercity Transit has moved into a free fare model, so as a result of that, there is not a need to keep those $200 in this petty cash account. So your considerations to abolish that.
Okay, any questions about this,
Yeah,
this issue? Go ahead.
on, are we talking about intercity transit or public defense?
No, what it said is as a result of Intercity Transit moving into a free fare, so there is not a need to keep this petty cash account, which the petty cash account was intended to provide
Bus
fares,
fare.
bus fares.
Okay, so, okay. I'm fine.
Okay.
I move to
Is it-
approve.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I move to approve the resolution to abolish public defense petty cash fund.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to abolish the petty cash fund assigned to Public Defense Office. All in favor? Any further discussion? No? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. Number 6 is the contract award for Case Road Fish Barrier Removal Project.
Yeah, for your consideration, Commissioners, for you to consider awarding this contract to Granite Construction Company. And as a matter of background, on June 3rd, 2020, we received a total of 6 bids to construct the Case Road Fish Barrier Removal Project. And the low bid was submitted by Granite Construction. The bid documents were checked, and everything is according to the specifications of the bidding process. The low bid was for $605,588. You may recall when you established the fish barrier passage, where the board allocated about $2 million a year from the real estate excise tax to funds to start systematically addressing the fish barriers in the county. You also provided direction to staff to look for other options as to how we can supplement this investment. As a result of this, this project is going to be partially funded by the Federal Highway Administration, federal funds by $500,000, and the remainder will come from the real estate excise tax. So the department is asking for you to consider awarding this contract to Granite Construction for a total of $666,146, which include a 10% contingency. And the project itself will remove a 30-inch diameter culvert and will replace with a new 16-foot wide structural steel plate culvert. So it goes from just about 36 inches to 16 foot wide. And this will access more than half a mile of fish habitat, which has been restricted for over 50 years.
Very cool. Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Nope. I would just add this issue, this award, and the next one for fish barrier removals is so doggone cool. And I know our tribal partners are thrilled with this too, as well. So is there a motion?
You're muted, Commissioner.
Oh, yeah, you're muted, Ty.
Dang it. All right.
All right.
I move to award the contract for the Case Road Fish Barrier Removal Project, CRP 63007, to Granite Construction Company for a total amount of $605,588, and to authorize the Director of Public Works to execute the contract and any change orders for this project due to unforeseen conditions only, not for changes in scope, up to 10% of the contract, which would be $60,558, or an aggregate of $666,146.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the contract for the Case Road Fish Barrier Removal Project. Any further discussion on that issue?
No, sir.
No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Number 7 is a contract award for Elbow Lake Creek at Eisner Road Fish Passage Project.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. On the same day, on May 28, 2020, we received 8 bids and to have a fish barrier project on Elbow Lake Creek. The low bid was submitted by Rodarte Construction Incorporated, and the low bid was $478,672.50. Also, as the previous item that you just approved, the staff was able to secure $80,000 from the Salmon Recovery Funding Board, which is issued through the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office, RCO. The remainder of funding for this project will come from the real estate excise tax too. The project removes an existing culvert identified as a fish barrier and replaces it with a new 60-foot-long prefabricated bridge. Staff is asking for you to consider awarding the contract for a total of $526,539, which includes a 10% contingency.
Any questions or comments?
Do you, maybe the county manager wants to comment about the bridge that we had built ahead of time?
Yeah, and thank you. And in fact, this is, as you may recall, you authorized going for a bid, which you awarded the contract to have prefabricated bridges to expedite the construction of the fish barrier passage. So we received those prefabricated bridges, and this is one of those projects in which we're going to be reducing the time of construction by a great amount. And the reason to that is because we have to do the construction within what we call the fish window, which is very restrictive during the summer time as to how we can do so. I have to give credit to Public Works to be inventive and making sure we have the biggest item of construction, which is the bridge, done ahead of time, so we can be constructed in a single construction season. Did I address your question?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. I mean, there's so much science to the stuff that people don't understand. So is there a motion?
I move to award the contract for the Elbow Lake Creek at Eisner Road Fish Passage Project, CRP 63014, to Rodarte Construction, Inc., for a total amount of $478,672.50, and to authorize the Director of Public Works to execute the contract and any change orders for this project due to unforeseen conditions only, not for changes in scope, up to 10% of the contract, $47,867, or an aggregate of $526,539.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the Elbow Lake Creek and Eisner Road Fish Passage Project contract. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Thank you. Item number 8 is request for proposal for professional services to complete an economic study of the HCP.
Yeah, I think, Commissioners, you also reviewed this item last week. And this particular proposal is for you to consider asking staff to issue a request for proposals to secure the services of a consultant to complete a study to provide findings of the findings of the economic effects resulting from the proposed multi-species programmatic habitat conservation plan, also known as the HCP. The work is to include an assessment of the economic effects to property owners seeking to develop land under the HCP. This particular effort is going to be funded by a federal grant, which was given to the county under Section 6 grant. The grant comes from the federal government, but it is distributed through the state. You had some questions last week to Chris Chapeau related to this particular item, and she's also available today if you have any further questions.
Good morning, Chris. Do you have,
You're muted.
commissioners have any questions for Chris?
No.
No, okay.
No, last week I had questions, and the key point that she answered last week was that this study that we're authorizing, it was included in the grant application that was made and approved, so we should follow through with it.
Good, thank you for that reminder. Is there a motion then?
I move to authorize the Community Planning and Economic Development Department Director to issue a request for proposal for the purpose of completing a study of the economic effects resulting from the proposed habitat conservation plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve or authorize the proposal for professional services to complete an economic study of the HCP. Any further discussion? No. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that motion carries. Hi, Jeremy.
Chris,
Thank
I
you,
like your
Chris.
prairie background there.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, number 9, Historic Commission Heritage Grant Program.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. You also reviewed this item last week. And back in 2019, the board approved issuing heritage grant monies to a specific deliverable. 2 of those grantees requested an extension for you to consider extending from December 2019, which is the deadline, to June 20, 2020, in order for them to meet the intents of the grant. As a result of the COVID-19, those 2 outfits have not been able to deliver those the intended outcomes of the grant, and they're requesting for you to extending that to December 31st, 2020. There's 2 grantees, is the Northwest Institute for Leadership and Change, and they secure a grant to document the history of Blacks in Thurston County who came between 1950 and 1975. The other grant was issued to the YWCA. As for transferring YWCA Olympia historic documents, photographs, scrapbooks, public relations materials, artifacts into a virtual platform. And again, the request is for you to consider extending those 2 grantees grants to December 31st, 2020. And Jeremy Davis is here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Jeremy, commissioners?
No.
No, sir.
Okay, nor do I. So is there a motion?
I move to approve a second 6-month extension to the 2019 Heritage Grant Program, extending the deadline from June 2020 to December 2020 due to COVID-19, and authorize the Community Planning and Economic Development Director to execute amendments to grant award contracts.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Historic Commission Heritage Grant Program COVID extension request. Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Everybody's muted? Okay, aye. Is that motion carried then? Did I hear-
Aye. Yeah.
Okay, aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Number 10, approve a professional services agreement.
Yeah, this proposal is for you to consider extending some of the agreements that we have for professional services related to the developmental disabilities functions that we have, and this is with Career Quest, Center Force, Exceptional Foresters EFI, Morningside, and Vegas. The Thurston Mason County's Developmental Disabilities Professional Services Agreement is planned from July 1st, 2020 through June 30, 2021. The Thurston County Developmental Disabilities Program uses funds from the Development Disabilities Administration, DDA. And as you may recall, you amended that contract with the state to secure those additional funds and extend that to next year. Some of the key actions or deliverables under this program. Under the supported employment services, assist clients with career exploration, job development, on-the-job training, and workplace support to help adults with developmental disabilities access and retain meaningful employment. Also, the high school transition services provide individuals with, again, with developmental disabilities ages 20 to 21 who are enrolled in their final year of high school with vocational assessment and discovery on the job training and job development within the goal of paid employment upon graduation of high school. And also the other program is the community inclusion, which includes the services to promote individualized skills development, independent living, and community integration for persons with individuals with developmental disabilities to learn how to actively and independently engage in the community. I believe Mark Muffet is online. If you have any questions, but Shelley's here. And you had some conversations with Mark last week. You asked some questions, and Shelley's available to answer further questions you may have some.
Okay, thank you, Shelley, for joining us. Any questions, commissioners, of Shelley?
I guess this is pass-through funding. That's my only
Anything
question.
else?
That's it.
Anything, Commissioner Menser, anything?
No.
No, okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve the Thurston Mason County Developmental Disabilities Professional Service Agreements with Career Quest, Center Forest, Exceptional Foresters, Morningside, and Vegas to provide supported employment, high school transition, value-based payment, and community inclusion services for the period of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, and to authorize the Director of Public Health and Social Services to sign these agreements and any future amendments that do not change the durations or compensations by more than 25%.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the professional services agreements as stated. Any further discussion? Nope, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Number 11, renewal of Microsoft Enterprise Agreement.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, Commissioners. As a matter of background, Thurston County uses Microsoft software for the core support of county businesses. Current products the county uses under Microsoft, the Microsoft brand are various components of Office 365, Outlook, Word, Excel, Access, SharePoint, Visio, Project, SharePoint, System Configuration Manager, SQL, and Microsoft Windows as a whole. The current contract ends on June 30th, 2020, and the proposal is for you to consider entering a 3-year agreement with Microsoft for licensing of these products that will take us from July 1st, 2020 for continuing the 3 years. The cost of this proposal is $339,730.72. That includes taxes. And I believe Dennis Osorio is here, the IT director, if you have any questions. And again, the funding for this is already included on the current budget through the internal services.
Okay, any questions of Dennis? Hi, Dennis.
Good morning, Chris Osorio, IT Director.
Any questions or comments of Dennis? Nope.
You
Okay.
know, yeah, I'll make one comment. I do understand that Dennis's group tried to negotiate a deal with Microsoft and was probably not successful because they have us over a barrel, and this is just kind of the cost of doing business. what it looks like.
Yes, Commissioner, we did see if there was any discounts or anything, especially with the pandemic going on for government. They did run it up their chain of command, and there was nothing on their end. We're using a state contract, so we are getting government pricing from Microsoft, but that's one of the reasons that they're that successful is their licensing model.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Dennis. All right, is there a motion?
I move to approve the 3-year Microsoft Enterprise Agreement for $339,730.72 per year and authorize the Information Technology Director to sign the agreement.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to renew the 3-year Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. Any further discussion on that? Nope. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Number 12 is an ordinance to update Thurston County floodplain development regulations for FEMA.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. You have not reviewed this item this last week. However, I sent you an email yesterday. So first of all, I apologize for the lateness of bringing this issue for your consideration. So, and there is a specific deadline. The board may consider taking an action on this. And so we received a letter from FEMA on May 21st, 2020, which states that the county has until June 19, 2020 to adopt and have the Department of Homeland Security Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, regional office approve of floodplain management measures that will satisfy with 44 Code of the Federal Regulations, also known as CFR, Section 6.3D and E of the National Flood Insurance Regulations. Thurston County, in this letter states, Thurston County must adopt floodplain management measures, such as floodplain management ordinance, to meet or exceed the minimum of the flood insurance program. To avoid suspension of the National Flood Insurance Program. If suspended, your community becomes ineligible for flood insurance through the NFIP, which is the Flood Insurance Program. New insurance policies cannot be sold, and existing policies cannot be renewed. So this is the timeline of which I've been working on. Staff received this letter back in May 21st and started looking at the details as to what we need to do. And the proposed resolution before you, an ordinance, is for you to consider adopting an interim code amendments, which is included in your packet. The interim ordinance includes technical definitions, clarifications of removal required by ecology, indicate records the county needs to retain, add cross-references to the different documents they will have in place, and add new sections to permit agricultural flood sanctuary structures, and that is important. Also, on this resolution, for your consideration, develops a work plan that will lead us to a permanent change in the code, which includes today, if you like, adopt an interim regulation, then exercise to have a public hearing on the interim of final regulations by August 15, 2020. And after the board briefing and the public hearing, the board may consider taking a further action in August of 2020 and maybe having an adoption of a final regulations by January 30, 2020. So this particular proposal, what it does two things: meet the requirements of FEMA of the June 19, 2020, and bridge us over through an interim regulation until the board has the opportunity to weigh in before you can implement a final regulation related to this requirement. So, and again, my deepest apology, because my intent is not to bring an issue at the last minute for you to take an action. But again, it's something that just came up, and we feel that it was our duty to bring this matter to your attention and for you to consider taking an action perhaps today. And again, if you don't feel comfortable taking an action today, I do have a board meeting tomorrow set up at 9:30 in the morning, where you will be considered taking a resolution moving into phase 3. I cannot decide if you need more time to review. And Josh and Jeremy are here to answer any questions and perhaps to correct me in terms of what I just stated to you.
No. Yeah, go ahead, Josh. Anything to add?
Thank you. Joshua Cummings, the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. And we have Jeremy Davis here with us, our Operations Manager as well. The County Manager got the overview spot on, and we too in CPED are not huge fans of tight turnarounds, so we apologize for this as well. One of the things I would like to say is Jeremy has done a huge lift on trying to get this more clearly understood through the Washington State Department of Ecology, what we really need to do. We received this, like the County Manager said, back in May, but we as Thurston County have worked really hard to be a Class 2 community, which is really good for the citizens in terms of floodplain and insurance. And so it was kind of a surprise to us that because we've done all this great legwork, we then have to do another level of this. And what Jeremy found out in that process, and I'll let Jeremy talk to the details of it, was that this is really a technical fix. And so that's what we boiled everything down to with ecology. So I'll let Jeremy take it away from here, but I also wanted to say thank you, Jeremy, for your hard work on that communication with ecology.
So before Jeremy start with, I just want to make sure that the board understand that this particular action before you does not add any additional requirements to the citizens. No additional permits, no additional fees, and in fact will help the citizens to get flood insurance if they need to secure one.
Very good. Anything to add, Jeremy?
Okay. So as Ramiro and Josh both indicated, this interim regulation does affect many technical changes to the code, and I could go into each and every one of those if you needed me to, but for the most part, we're adding definitions to the code that FEMA has been scrutinizing. Local code, well, I should say ecology has indicated to the county, FEMA has been scrutinizing local codes to look to see that we actually have these definitions in our code. They also recommended several changes to the text in our code to make it so that it better coincides or matches what the federal regulations say. We are adding one big item, at least we think it's fairly large, and that's allowing agricultural flood sanctuary structures in our flood zone to assist our agricultural users, our agricultural property owners, to have a location for their livestock to go in case of a flood and or store their farm equipment. Our staff over the past few years have been working with local engineers on developing what this platform could be for those agricultural users. And it's in fact something that ecology is very interested in receiving information on so they can pass it to other jurisdictions. I'll also say in our conversations with ecology, we did spend a considerable time re-educating them on what our code does for our citizens of Thurston County and how it regionally protects them from flood. And flood, you know, in old codes is called the public enemy, interestingly enough. But it does do a really good job with that. We received a very high score in our community rating system review. And ecology actually indicated to us they thought our integration of our flood code, which is our how do I do it code, and our can I do it code, our critical areas, was very good. And they commended us on that and thought that we did an excellent job on that. And marrying those two items together actually helped us narrow down some of the initial comments that they had on our flood code. But again, it's really technical in nature. We're adding definitions. We're making some changes to language. And we're adding some cross references to the code. It's very narrowed down.
All right. Any questions or comments of Jeremy or Josh?
Well, I don't know if it's as much of a to them. I'm usually not a fan of rushed action, but in this case, it seems like the citizens have the possibility of losing out if we don't meet this time frame, and I don't know that a day is going to make a difference on my ability to review everything. And I know the Ag Committee is concerned about some of this ag issue and storage of machinery and such. So I guess this is just a temporary, if you will. We'll have a hearing on the ordinance when we change the ordinance to a full time. So I guess I'm all in favor of moving ahead with this.
Commissioner Menser?
Nothing to add. I like the approach of getting this squared on an interim basis, and then we can have a chance to seek any input on it. And so I'm comfortable. We need to make sure we maintain our flood rating.
Exactly. We still have time. So this is still timely, and it does benefit the ag community and our citizens. So I'm going to go for this easily. Is there a motion?
Move to approve an interim ordinance amending Chapter 14.38 Development in Flood Hazard Areas to ensure the county's floodplain development regulations meet the minimum requirements of the National Flood Insurance Program.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance to update Thurston County floodplain development regulations to meet the National Flood Insurance Program requirements. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, John.
Thank you, commissioners. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate your flexibility.
Yep. And number 13 is the approval of the voucher list. I trust my seatmates have had a chance to go through the vouchers. Any questions or comments? No. Okay. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the voucher list for the week of June 1st, 2020 for a combined amount of $1,975,255.62.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the voucher list for June 1st, 2020. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. That concludes the decision making. And now we're going to move into the commissioners' items. And the first is a discussion regarding or information regarding the 2020 use of fireworks.
Yeah, and this is a yearly item that I bring to the board's attention. Back in 2016, the board approved an ordinance number 15308. And the gist of that ordinance authorizes the county manager to, after consulting with the fire marshal and any other officials as may deem appropriate, may prohibit the discharge of consumer fireworks during the periods of extreme fire danger. The prohibition shall be in effect 1 day prior to the date in which the consumer fireworks are legally sold under Chapter 70.77 of the RCW. RCW 70.77 states that illegal fireworks across the state can sell on the 28th of June from 9 o'clock a.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. Through the 4th of July. So again, I bring this matter to your attention just to make you aware that we're tracking on this. At this point, the weather conditions are favorable for the county manager not to issue a ban on the discharge of fireworks. And again, this is very clear. The ordinance only allows, in case of extreme weather conditions, to ban the discharge. It does not ban the sales and distribution of fireworks in non-incorporated areas of the county. So I will exercise the mandate of this ordinance. I will be in touch with the fire marshal and the fire districts, as well as with your director of emergency services. And I will bring this matter to your attention next week for a final recommendation. Because again, at this point, I don't see a need to exercise the mandate of this ordinance.
All right. Any questions of the county manager? No? All right. moving on. Department of Transportation parcel waiver, discussion and decision.
So on your packet, you have information related to the Washington State Department of Transportation sent you an email. In RCW 47.12055 and 43.17400 provides that at any time that the state like to surplus a particular property, they need to make sure they give you the opportunity to waive the disposition of this property. And this is a required 60 days. I believe you received this this notice last week, and the state is asking for your consideration to waive this surplus of this property prior to the 60-day requirement. Attached in your packet is the depiction of this property they're planning to surplus to the city of Lacey. This is located within the municipal boundaries of the city of Lacey. This is located just about north of I-5 along the Marvin Road corridor. So if you see the property, which is depicted in red, that was owned by the Washington State Department of Transportation. When they built the new headquarters for Region 1, I believe, Region 3 of the Washington State Department of Transportation on that property, they ended up not using this strip of land that you see on your packet. And again, the intent of this is for Washington State Department of Transportation to surplus this property to the city of Lacey. I believe the city of Lacey can use this additional right-of-way to do improvements on Marvin Road. And right now, I ask the board to consider waiving the 60-day requirement. And as a result of your direction, I will inform DOT of your direction. Any questions?
Any questions?
The only question I have, is this gonna take a formal vote of some type?
No, you just give me direction.
Just direction?
Yeah, just give me direction and I will follow up.
Okay.
Any questions, Ty, anything? Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you. I will follow up.
Fair board letters, or letters to the fair board.
Yes, Commissioners, the Fair Board submitted letters to you as well as Judge Cummins, and this is related to some of the potential budget reductions you are considering in 2020. As you may recall, you set aside on your 2020 budget, set aside $250,000 to do a signature project at the fairgrounds. So the Fair Board was in the process of assessing how they can probably utilize the $250,000, and during your initial preliminary decision as to how you can reduce expenses on the general fund, you included the reduction of this $250,000 that it was intended to the fairgrounds as ways for you to reduce the expenditures in 2020 from the general fund. I am not going to read each of those letters, but that is the gist of the letters that you have received from the Fair Board. And Josh Cummins is available to answer any questions, as well as Robin.
Go ahead, Robin, please.
I would just like to clarify that the 250,000 is not an allocation from general fund. It is currently earmarked in REIT 1.
Ah.
That's coming from REIT.
Oh, thank you, Robin.
All right, Josh, do you have anything to add, sir?
No, not at this time. I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, questions of Josh? Go ahead, Ty.
maybe Ramiro covered it. I'm sorry. I was trying to, I haven't seen the letters and I was trying to read them at the same time as I was listening. But did we take that 250? My recollection was that we just didn't have a specific fleshed out proposal. So we just kind of decided not to move forward with the 250. Is that accurate, or did we reallocate it or do something more than what I remember with that money?
Yeah, go ahead, Robin.
So the money is currently in the budget and earmarked. It has been earmarked for a few years now as available for a project on the fairgrounds. To date, no project has been identified. And in the budget reduction exercise, the 15% exercise, I had proposed to get to 15%, that this is one of the things that would be eliminated. But the money is currently in the fund, earmarked, ready to go should the board decide to authorize a project.
And in terms of the project, may I speak on that for a minute?
Please.
Robin is right. There is not a formally identified project approved by the Board of County Commissioners, but the Fair Board and Fair Foundation members have identified something that they'd like to do on the fairgrounds. And it's kind of caught in a chicken and an egg kind of situation right now, where they're trying to see if the project is permittable before they formally present it through CPED to the Board of County Commissioners. So they have a very strong idea on what they'd like to do, but you as the board have not yet seen a formal proposal because they're not sure if it's a viable, permittable project. So we're kind of stuck in this chicken and an egg right now, but they do have something in their mind.
Chicken and egg analogy regarding the fair. That's thank you.
Unintentional, but yeah, thank you.
Is it pronounced the willow wheat? Or how is that? What is it?
Will you white?
Will you white? Okay, the will you white. So they're identifying something there that is in very ill repair. I don't know if it's a danger or not, but in as they mentioned, some of the pillars. Yet another building. So go ahead, Ramiro.
Commissioners, just to make sure, the staff is not asking you to make a decision today. I'm just bringing these letters to your attention, and I believe you have those in front of you. At your pleasure, you can read in more detail, and perhaps the conversation will have to be when you consider all the budget reductions for 2020, which is coming up.
Yeah, well, I'm reading the letter for the first time as well, and Kathy McWade, the president of the Fair Foundation, and Ann Shipley, president of the Fair Board, they make good arguments and such. And that 250,000 from REIT, that's kind of been paused or earmarked, whatever term we want to use. That is a pretty healthy REIT fund. Is it that REIT 1 or 2?
That is from REIT 1. REIT 2 would not be an allowable use at the fairgrounds.
Okay.
But in REIT 1, it is a somewhat healthy fund. We expect REIT revenues to decrease in the economic downturn. REIT 1 is mainly used for bond payments, and you had reserve money for the jail expansion project, also known as the Flex Unit. And REIT 1 will be really the only viable source we have for Plan B of the courthouse projects. So there is not nearly enough money in REIT 1 to do everything that we need from that fund. I will also just mention that at the time a prior board reserved this funding, the thought was that it would be an investment in the fairgrounds that would assist in the generation of revenue to be able to eventually decrease the general fund contribution to the fair fund. So part of, this board does not need to go with that. But I just wanted you to know a little bit of the history of the allocation.
All right. Did I see your hand up, Gary?
Yeah, just might comment that this is not general fund, and the fair board does make a good argument. They've been in a pinch lately. They haven't even been able to have meetings to work on this particular project. And because it's not general fund, I'd like to see that money stay in there for the future use. I don't see that we need to take it out or do anything different at this point in time.
Yeah, go ahead, Ty.
Peggy's letter says that the foundation has been seeking grants to augment county funds. Is the expectation that the Will You Wait Pavilion renovation going to cost more than the $250,000? Is what I'm assuming by that statement. Maybe Josh, do you know?
Yeah, I think that's part of the fleshing out of the idea, and I think that what they want to do will cost more than the $250,000, and that's why they're seeking other grants. It's part of the plan that they want to put together for you, maximizing the dollars of the refunds.
So is the gist, and I've skimmed now all three letters that all seem to be, sort of advocating for this project. Is the gist of it like, hey, commissioners, we're still out there. We've got, don't spend this money, or don't put it somewhere else, because we're still trying to work toward this project that we all are committed to. That's kind of the gist I'm getting from skimming the three letters. Is that accurate?
I think it's a fair assessment. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't need to exclude Peggy. Very well written letter as well. And especially with the county fair being canceled this year, that is going to really put a major crimp into the fair revenues. And when I think of real estate excise tax money, what better way than to put it back into the community via the fair? So, yeah, we're not making a decision today, but I'm kind of leaning towards it. So when will this come back to us?
As part of your budget conversations there, when you explore options to reduce expenditures for 2020.
Okay. Anything further, commissioners of Robin or Josh? All right. Thank you both very much. And then we're moving on to the hiring exceptions discussion and direction.
So what we're trying to do is give you a perspective, as you provide a direction. There is going to be somewhat of obviously a hiring freeze in all the vacant positions, and also somewhat of a hiring chill for those positions that become vacant. And it also, you directed staff to bring you a specific request on a need-by-need basis. So we wanted to make sure that we have a tracking mechanism for you to track. So attached for you this 8.5 by 11 sheet that gives you a perspective of what perhaps you considering approving, what you have approved, and what might be coming your way. And as you can tell, most of the positions in here are either extra help or temporary, except for the position, the financial analyst, that you took an action, I believe, last week on the auditor's office. So, and that is stated in here. So I'm not expecting you to read all these positions at this point. I just want to give you a perspective as to some of the tools that we're trying to implement, just to make sure that you have a broad perspective of the positions that you might consider.
Is now joining the conference.
You might consider expressing your direction to exempt the hiring chill in a way. So I do have 3 positions for you to consider today. Those are, again, temporary extra help positions. And those 3 positions are from Superior Court. One is this court security, again, is extra help. The court security extra help position fills in for the court security officers when they have a scheduled time off or on vacation, or perhaps they feel sick. So there is an important capacity the district court, Superior Court needs to have in order to backfill with the full-time security officers may not be able to come and do their work. That extra position allows to backfill that. That's number 1. Number two is a bailiff, and it will be an on-call basis. And again, there's an extra help. Bailiffs are extra help on call to assist our juries. They only hire bailiffs on the day when they have jury trials. So you know right now the jury trials are suspended, but those will be coming later, I believe, next month. And there is also is going to be a backlog as to how they need to process jury selections, and the bailiff is an extra help to allow them to do that. The next position, also a temporary position, is a pro-term judge or commissioner. And also this position will backfill any elected Superior Court judges or a court commissioner when they are on vacation, they feel sick, and they're not able to come and conduct court proceedings. And again, this is capacity the Superior Court needs. So those are the three positions for your consideration to authorize moving forward on the hiring process. Any questions?
Okay, questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
Why is it that we couldn't use CARES funding at least until October 31st for any of these? They all seem that they have a direct correlation to this virus issue that we're dealing with.
Not necessarily, because those positions have been, the temporary positions have been, every year they have hired those positions. So this is not a new position related to the emergency.
Commissioner Menser, any questions?
I had the same thought as Commissioner Edwards. I'm just trying to think about, I don't have any questions right now. I'm kind of processing this.
Okay, then I've got a couple questions. Number one, the on-call bailiff, and that individual does not get paid unless they're called in, I would imagine.
Yeah, only on the days they serve here on the jury selection.
Okay,
Yeah.
and
Jury
that
trials.
this is typical. They do this every year.
Yes, sir. It's to deal with the backlog they do. So they do have extra help in the past.
So I see this. This was created like 5 days ago, and I don't know how soon they're going to expect to hire people. But for and we haven't even, was it one jury trial that we're having at a time, and we need extra help as we transition into additional juries. By asking these questions, I'm not casting dispersions on the request. I just need all the information I can get. So a bailiff for jury trials, and our jury trials have been very limited. I'm not sure how they're going to expand, especially in light of how we're not we're addressing the social distancing within our current space. And adding a pro tem judge or commissioner, again, I'm thinking, wow, we've got a backlog, so that kind of makes sense, but I'm not sure backlog of trials or cases, but we have nowhere to try them. And then a court security officer, it's the same thing. I'm not against it, but I'm also thinking the same thing as my seatmates. Why it wouldn't be COVID related, but I understand if this has been ongoing, that doesn't answer the 5-question test. But I'm still trying to process it. Anybody else? Go ahead. Are you waving the white flag, Gary?
I'm not willing to surrender yet, though. So I do have a comment. The county manager mentioned that we have a backlog. The reason we have a backlog is because of this virus business. We've got issues where we have to keep people socially distanced because we have a virus issue. So I contend that this is still eligible for CARES funding because we wouldn't be doing this. They might be hiring people to deal with some of this stuff, but I think there's a direct correlation to this virus issue, and I think we can answer those 5 questions when it comes to things, and I'll just use the comment made, backlogs, and we wouldn't have a backlog if we didn't have this problem we're facing here.
Robin, do we have a fix on the what the amount of money is that if they're temporary? I don't know what the end date is. So do we have a fix on how much this is gonna cost and for how long?
Sorry, I'm looking right now. I do not have the cost, but it is my understanding that these are positions that we just normally have in place. And it's to have sufficient people available on an on-call basis. So then when they need someone to call in, that they've got someone already vetted and in the pool, if you will. So this is nothing new. And they just need to be able to go through the process to identify the people who would be on call.
So these three positions are not full-time employees, they're not FTEs.
No, it's extra help.
They're just, what does that mean?
They're extra help, that they're called when needed.
So
Okay, even the court security officer
Yeah.
and the pro tem judge, okay.
maybe let me rephrase the intent of these positions, commissioners. The security extra help is to backfill when a core security officer is not able to come to work, whether when it's on vacation or is sick.
Okay,
The pro term judge commissioner is on the same terms, is to backfill when a judge and a court commissioner are on vacation or sick. That is when the pro term judge comes and conduct business. This is not related to the emergency, because right now the judges are conducting court proceedings. And one of the judges can become sick for the next week, and there is not a backfill to supplement the needs of that. So this is not really related to the emergency. This is a backfill that has been implemented for the last few years, and it is already included on the Superior Court budget for 2020. So there is no new additional money that is requesting from the board. They're just requesting for you to considering taking the hiring freeze out of those three positions.
okay. Go ahead, Ty.
I think what's confusing us is at least me, is like on court security, I've been in multiple meetings over the last 2 weeks with court talking about how they're going to have, in order to have a one-way flow through building 2, they're going to open up a set of doors, and they're going to need a whole nother security station over there in order to have proper one-way flow of people. So it seems like they're going to need more security officers directly related to COVID-19. That may not be what this is, but I think that's what may be in the back of all of our minds of why we can't shake loose the idea that this could be COVID funded.
Yeah, and right on point, Commissioner Menser, because on Friday, you authorized specifically this, which includes additional security personnel
Okay.
as part of the COVID-19, yeah.
Okay.
Right, and that is separate from this.
Yeah.
So that
Okay,
is
that's
flow
right. Yeah, it was
control.
that recent. That's why it's lodged in my head.
That is flow control. Going back to the solid waste. All right, so the request is to waive or exempt these, the hiring clause for these three positions.
That is correct.
And you're looking for a thumbs up or down? Is that what you're looking for right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any more discussion, Gary or Ty?
No,
Just for me, I mean, I take the hiring freeze and chill very seriously, but given that these are basically on-call positions that may not even need to be used, and they're part of the core roster of court functionality, I'm going to go ahead and give a thumbs up.
I am for those reasons as well.
Thank you, Commissioners.
it's now 11:45.
What about the financial analyst for the auditor? What's that position for?
Oh, you already approved that 2 weeks
We
ago.
already did that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right then. So that takes care of the hiring, position tracking discussion. Anything else
No, sir.
on that? Anything in the next couple of minutes regarding public testimony, Romero?
I have nothing. I addressed the public testimony earlier that you received.
You did? Robin, anything for the good of the order? Okay, commissioners, anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? All right. Romero, anything?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. This meeting, June 16th, 2020 is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.